All right. Good 90 pinch hit edition, right?
Good 45.
Good 45.
Yeah, I don't know. Just hanging out now.
Yeah, at this point. Yeah. Hanging out at the end of June, right before you go to Shreveport, basically.
Ship off to the wild, wild
Make
west.
the big move, the farthest away from Calhoun you've ever lived, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is not far. It's an hour and 30, so I think I could make it.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll like it.
What's the most thing the thing you're most excited about?
The most. I'm just ready to meet some new people.
Yeah.
Even though I love the old people.
I'm tired of these people.
Yeah, I'm ready to move on. But no, I'm just ready to foster some friendships that from what I've heard from like other physicians and stuff, that they still have to this day. And it's like they talk about their med school friends, and it's they just say it's the funnest time of their life, which is, I don't know. I can see why going into that last week that I went to, but I'm just ready to meet some people and just from all walks of life. I mean, they're from everywhere.
Yeah.
UT, Florida, Colorado.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess that's like college, but most of my friends here were from here. Or from Louisiana, so it wasn't a huge cultural shock. But
yeah, I would think for med school, it's kind of one of those things, almost like the military or something like that, where you're really going through it with people.
Yeah.
Like you're like doing it, you know?
Yeah,
and so that's why you forge some relationships.
Yeah, I feel like that's a big aspect is the trauma bond.
Yeah.
Kind of like, I guess, a fraternity, why people get so close, because you just kind of go through crap together.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess med school is some crap that you just got to jump. It's a pretty big hoop.
Yeah.
And some stress. But I think that's I think that's one of the, I can't be friends with all 150 classmates, but I do believe the close-knit friend group that you're going to meet, I think that's why they get so close. Yeah. I think you're going to have a lot of friends, but
sure,
you're going to have that one group.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad I already have, like a little group already going in from ULM.
Mm-hmm.
I think they called us like the Monroe 7 or something because we just kind of hung out with each other. We always came back wherever we're hanging out. We'd talk and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess I can see why, but that's just.
I thought you wanted new friends.
I do, but I like them too. But you're already comfortable with them. So even though you're talking to new people, you always make your way back somehow and just talk to them. Yeah. But you can tell who all were from LSU and Baton Rouge and who are all from Tech.
Yeah.
That's just human nature.
You cling to what you know.
You're going to cling to at the end of everything. But met some good people. I'm just excited to get in a groove and get out of this unknown phase.
Yeah.
But
so you had 1 year in the dorm or one semester in the dorm here? None. You were always at home.
I was always at home. I think it's, what is it? How far you live away from home? You have to, if you're not living at home, you have to stay your first semester or first year in the dorm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I was living at home. So I was like, why would I
move out?
Put that under my name for no reason.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
My parents don't bother me, so yeah. They're half the time I'm not even there, so it's not a big deal.
My parents don't bother me.
Yeah, they're cool.
So for you though, so that means, like, I'm not trying to say anything, but like cooking, laundry, all that kind of stuff. Like, how much of that have you been doing over these past
I feel like
few
I've
years?
always cooked.
Yeah.
My mom ain't gonna listen to this, but I've cooked more than my mom, I think. Like, she would cook easy meals, but I don't mind cooking.
Yeah.
Which I know I say that it'll probably be a hassle just with studying and stuff. But my laundry, I will say, mom does that. She just don't want me getting in her way.
Yeah.
She's like, just don't touch anything.
Yeah.
I got it. She has a routine.
Right.
Yeah, I've had it. But I guess I've never paid a house note or bills like that. But again, that's what the auto draft is for. Right. I think I could figure that out.
Yeah, that's not that difficult.
No, but other than that, I mean, I'm pretty independent in that manner. But it will be a change living by yourself. No matter who you are.
Washing your socks, you know.
Yeah, and plus it's gonna be just me, and I'll be wearing scrubs half the time.
Yeah,
and I'll just throw everything in and turn it on cold. Like, it's not that. It'll probably be like, oh my gosh, I have to do that. It'll be an extra check off the list I have to do.
Yeah.
But I think humans have come to adapt to worse things. So
Yeah. You're in med school. You can figure it out.
I think I say that the first month. Golly, I gotta wash clothes. I gotta do all this. I gotta meal prep. But
you got to go to the grocery store. I don't
know
things you got to do.
I think I just have to set a checklist and just to get in a groove of when do I go to the grocery store? When's wash day? When's that?
And since you're living over there, you got like at least one day a week. You just go walk through Bass Pro.
Absolutely.
Put that on your schedule.
No, yeah, I will do that before I do anything. That'll be my decompression. But no, I'm excited.
Yeah, good.
But I'm glad I stayed at home for the money wise. But then it's like, okay, it's a bigger change now living alone.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I think I'll enjoy it, and I may find a roommate over there, some dude I really enjoy hanging out with, and you never know.
But the other deal is you're going to be so busy. Probably like coming home is just going to be like eat and crash,
So we have class from 8 to 11 every day, which isn't bad. That's very good for a med school.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I wanted to go to Shreveport. But I feel like I'm going to be around these people all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, from 8 to 11 for sure, but sometimes you're going to have anatomy lab, doing all this stuff, and you'll be studying at the school, and you'll be doing after school curriculars and stuff. Then it's like, sometimes I might want to go home and not have company.
Yeah.
I want to be able to choose Kyle said it perfectly. He said, you kind of get to choose when you have company. I was like, you're right. And if the roommate's even though he's cool, he's still a breathing specimen around you that you kind of have to conversate with if he's around.
Yeah. Unless you're just a total jerk.
Yeah. Unless you're just a douche or something. But I don't think I wouldn't mind it if it was just a dude I hung out with. It wouldn't matter.
Well, good stuff.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Riles, chapter 1 is about to start. So, it's pretty awesome.
You might see some bags under my eyes in the podcast that come in the future. But
it'll be good.
Build your character.
That's right. Well, so we read in our our plunge sub 40 group. We've been reading Acts. We just finished it. So every Wednesday morning, we've been doing that for a while. And we read 28, the last chapter of Acts. We probably read that like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that.
3 weeks ago.
And so it kind of struck a chord with me. And then you had talked about how that you had read it before and heard it preached on before. And there's just a lot of good things in there, So we kind of wanted to look at that a little bit. So I don't know. You think we should?
I say we just read the 10.
Read the 10 verses.
Yeah.
But at some point, we're going to have to do some backstory. I feel like. But
all
right. Well, you've been talking for a while, so I'll read. So
thanks.
Give you the break. Once safely on shore, we found out that the island was called Malta. The islanders showed us unusual kindness. They built a fire and welcomed us all because it was raining and cold. Paul gathered a pile of brushwood, and as he put it on the fire, a viper, driven out by the heat, fastened itself on his hand. When the islanders saw the snake hanging from his hand, they said to each other, "This man must be a murderer, for though he escaped from the sea, justice has not allowed him to live." But Paul shook the snake off into the fire and suffered no ill effects. The people expected him to swell up or suddenly fall dead, but after waiting a long time and seeing nothing unusual happen to him, they changed their minds and said he was a god. There was an estate nearby that belonged to Publius, the chief official of the island. He welcomed us to his home and for 3 days entertained us hospitably. His father was sick in bed, suffering from fever and dysentery. Paul went in to see him and after prayer placed his hands on him and healed him. When this had happened, the rest of the sick on the island came and were cured. They honored us in many ways, and when we were ready to sail, they furnished us with the supplies we needed. And it's 28, 1 through 10.
Yeah.
So
I think you can give a better backstory. I'll give it a very
Gotcha. Well, so this is the last chapter of Acts, and one of the things we know about Acts is that Luke wrote it. And so Luke is with Paul, and this is Luke who wrote the Gospel of Luke. He was a physician. He wasn't one of the 12 disciples, but he kind of came around after the fact, and I would say like assisted Paul, kind of was running with Paul.
A sidekick.
Yeah, a little bit of a sidekick kind of deal. I don't know how close in age they were. I think there's definitely an assumption that Luke is younger, but I don't know that for a fact. But we do know that Luke is the narrator. He's the one piecing this whole book of Acts together, and it's kind of like a lot of people have said, like Luke is like, if you imagine a two-part movie, like Luke, the book of Luke is part one, and then Acts is part two. And so Paul is on this ship, and he's a guy clearly who has traveled around quite a bit. He's had all these missionary journeys. And so what we know about him there too is he's been a lot of places. And so being on a boat, which is the main way to travel, is nothing new for Paul. And on his missionary journeys, he was sort of always in control of where he went, and felt like from the very beginning of his conversion that he was called not necessarily to minister to the Jews, but to the Gentiles, to those outside of Jerusalem. Like he was never going to stay in Jerusalem. That was never the plan. Now, some of those guys like Peter, they were going to stay more around ground zero, but Paul was going to go out. That was a huge part of his calling. And he reflects on that a couple different times in the book. If you're reading, you can find chapter 9 is his story of conversion, but he goes back to that story like multiple times, sharing his testimony, and in that, says some stuff about how that God has called him to the Gentiles. So anyway, but every time Paul goes anywhere, if there's Jews there, they get riled up at what he's talking about. They disagree with him, or at least some of them do. And then sometimes even the non-Jews will, if he's like really ruffling the system, they'll get after him. But it's oddly enough the Jewish people, similar to what Jesus had to deal with, that are the ones that are spitting the most hatred and venom and stuff. And so we get to a point in these later chapters when Paul does go back to Jerusalem that there's a group that just says, we're taking this guy down. We don't want him anymore. He's causing too much trouble. And so it's very similar to how the Pharisees and people connected to the Pharisee group will, they go after Jesus. The very same thing happens to Paul. Like they want to kill him. They believe that's the best thing to happen. They need to get him out of the way. And so during that time, Paul realizes this. And so he begins to lean on the Romans for, I guess, in some ways protection, because he knows that he's called to the Gentiles and he doesn't want these Jewish people to win here. I mean, clearly he probably doesn't want to die, but he also sees the greater purpose in what's happening. So anyway, when the Jews, the Pharisees in particular, are a group connected to the Pharisees, band together to kill him, Paul throws out this Roman citizenship card. A lot of people talk about how he plays that hand when he needs to. It's like a trump card. And so it allows those Roman soldiers to recognize him and go, hey, you're a Roman citizen as well. Well, yeah, we're going to protect you, and we don't really see that you're doing anything wrong, and so on and so forth. And eventually Paul says, I want to go speak before Caesar. That's where I want my case to be heard. And so because he appeals to Caesar, and the Bible's real clear about this, the Romans look at it and go, okay, well, you appeal to Caesar, we're going to take you to Caesar. So he's a prisoner.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, right. And he's going to go speak before the highest court in the world at that point. Rome is the pinnacle of civilization at this time in the world. And so Paul's basically going to go stand before the most powerful man on the planet. Similar to what Joseph did, what Moses did with Pharaoh, way back in the Old Testament. So now Paul is headed to Rome, and you don't walk to Rome, you don't fly to Rome, from Jerusalem, you take a boat to Rome. And so he's on this ship with clearly
it says a lot of people. There's a lot of people.
276 people on board is what Luke records. And so some of them are obviously the people that run the ship. Probably there's just some regular passengers. Yeah. And then there's Paul's group, which basically consists of Paul, Luke, and a few other probably close followers, maybe. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And then some Roman soldiers and this Roman commander. And so as the ship gets closer and closer, or further and further along on their journey, they come upon a big storm, like think George Clooney, Perfect Storm type deal, massive sea storm, nor'easter is what the Bible calls it, and they end up having to run aground. And so there's a lot of little things that happen on the way. This is all in chapter 27, the story of the ship. And so as they keep going, they have to throw things overboard. The sailors are ready to bail, and Paul tells the Roman commander, "Hey, we won't survive without these guys." And so they cut the ropes to the lifeboats. They throw the grain over. They throw the tackle over. And he's concerned about everybody's life on board, and he wants to make sure they all survive. But also, I think Paul's constantly in his head. He's going, "We also got to get to Rome.
Yeah.
Like I know what I'm supposed to do here." And God, he'll call back to it and say, "Well, God said I'm going to Rome. That I don't have to be afraid." And so he kind of keeps that in his back pocket this whole journey. And then they run aground, and they end up getting to shore, and they got there on planks or pieces of the ship, or I guess they swam or whatever, but they kept everybody together, and they end up on the island of Malta. So that's where we are.
Perfect.
Yeah. So long background, sorry, but yeah.
You need it.
Got to know where you come from.
Yeah, but I can't remember from reading, but didn't God say that no one would die from this shipwreck?
Yeah,
it says it somewhere.
He does say that to Paul, specifically that you're not going to die. You're going to get to Rome.
Yeah. But I know that
yeah,
they didn't. Paul said something before the ship even took off that he didn't have a good feeling about, because it was a bad time, like
to sail
during that whenever, I guess it was autumn or something.
Yeah,
and it's like a very bad time to sail around that area. And I don't know if that was a revelation from God, or that was just like his experience.
Yeah,
him saying that.
But that's what he says in 27. He said in verse 9, sailing had already become dangerous because by now it was after the fast, so the time of year that it was. And then Paul warned them, "Men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss to ship and cargo and to our own lives also." But the centurion, instead of listening to what Paul said, followed the advice of the pilot and the owner of the ship. So they decide to press on, even though it's not the best time.
But she was a prisoner, so I guess I wouldn't really listen to him.
Yeah, I mean, he's not really in charge.
Right? Yeah. I think they did begin to listen to Paul.
Yeah, eventually they do.
Yeah, because they were going to get on the lifeboats, and he's like, "No, we gotta
keep everybody together." Yeah. So what you're talking about, and this is a big verse. So in 21, this is in chapter 27. It says the men had gone without food, and Paul stood up before them and said, "Men, you should have taken my advice and not to sail from Crete. Then you would have spared yourselves this damage and loss. But now I urge you to keep up your courage, because not one of you will be lost. Only the ship will be destroyed. Last night, an angel of the God whose I am and whom I serve stood beside me and said, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. So keep up your courage, men, for I have faith in God that it will happen just as he told me. Nevertheless, we must run aground on some island.'" So that's kind of funny too. Like, here's Paul, the prisoner, going, "Hey guys, God told me it's all going to be okay."
I forgot to tell y'all that an angel came last night. Yeah, that's important information.
It's pretty nuts, because most of these people wouldn't believe him anyway.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah, you're the guy in chains, and you're not the sailor, you're not the captain, you're not the commander. So what are we listening to you for? But maybe he did encourage him, And like you said, eventually, as the chapter goes on and we get into the actual wreckage of the ship, they do listen to him.
Yeah, I feel like Paul had he was a prisoner. I know that, but from just kind of reading through Acts, I feel like he had a good ground with the Romans in a way. Like they didn't just despise him, because they let his friends come with him, his group.
Yeah.
So they he had some leeway with them. And then the commander, he showed like grace to Paul, or he had a good relationship.
Yeah.
I can't find the commander's name or whatever. I think it said it somewhere, but apparently they had a good relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess he wasn't at the bottom of the totem pole.
Right.
He's pretty close.
Yeah. Like they definitely had respect for him, and they cared about him a little bit, And but also you have the fact of, well, they also cared about their jobs. he's a Roman citizen.
Yeah.
He's got to be treated.
He has to
in a
make it
certain
to
way.
Caesar.
Yeah, this is what we got to do.
He holds some type of pull.
Yeah, there's accountability there. So, but anyway, like so then they do crash, and they're on Malta, and so that's kind of what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
I think mostly is the time on the island, and so one of the first things that happens once they get there, it says that the islanders, kind of took care of them and came alongside them, but every movie where there's a shipwreck or anything like that, or a plane crash or whatever, and they're stuck on an island. You see people, they just naturally begin to form a circle and stack luggage and whatever belongings or whatever scraps from the ship they can. And one of the first things they do is they build a fire. Yeah. There's so much that goes into that, I think, regarding community and I think protection, like security. Like if you got to build a fire, we got to stay together. We got to have some light. We got to have some warmth. They needed to dry out, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so they start building this fire. And in the midst of doing that, Paul is out there gathering wood just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And we talked about this. Like, he's not saying, well, look, I'm pretty important here. I'm on my way to Caesar. I'm eventually going to write the Bible. You guys go gather the wood.
He's not standing where the bonfire should be. Like, using that index finger.
He's out there gathering wood. He's doing what he's supposed to do. So I don't know how deep we want to go into some of this stuff, but like as far as like when you're put in a situation, you have the opportunity to observe. You have the opportunity kind of to not participate, I guess, or you can dive in and get it done and be part of what's happening there, right?
Yeah.
So because I mean the people on the island, well, they never met any of these people before.
Yeah,
so
it's like a calling from God. Like, doesn't put you on the sideline. You still gotta. It's not just it's gonna come forth, open. Every door's gonna open. Like, Paul's still doing his part. And a lot of this, he's not above anybody, as you can tell.
Yeah.
I mean, he cares for people, and he's doing his part, like you were saying.
Yeah, he's still willing to go gather firewood. And yeah, you're right. Like sometimes we think we've arrived or we're above stuff, and I think you feel like that happens a lot in different phases of life. Like you were talking about the doctor, and not scrubbing in all the way or whatever. Like it was just see what's in front of my name.
I'm the attending. I can do what I want.
I can do what I want.
I mean, technically, yes, but come on.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
So there's something to this fact of never getting bigger than your britches or whatever, or thinking that you're the stuff, and so that happens a lot in life. You see that with different people, that different jobs and stuff. But I think we can do that as Christians too, though.
Absolutely.
We begin to think, oh well, I've arrived. I've got my Christian T-shirt on. Jesus won,
the Creator told me.
And then you start saying things. You start saying things differently. Like, well, God told me not to do that, or whatever.
Did he?
I feel called to do this today instead of going and hanging out with you. Or
I've done my charity work. Like I got my calling. I'm good. Yeah.
I went on a mission trip last summer. All that kind of stuff, right? And so we begin to act that way sometimes, like we're like above people or we're above certain tasks, and that we're moving on and we're getting more mature.
We're rising in the ranks of Christianity.
Yeah. And I think too, like, so then and I get it, right? Well, like when you're in college and you make a decision to follow Christ, then there's certain things that you got to leave behind. There's certain even people sometimes that you have to leave behind. And no doubt, man, you're a different person now. And so I would never argue that. But if you really look at Jesus and then look at Paul as well, like they still are constantly engaged with all the people around them. Yeah. I mean, that's who the gospel still needs to get to.
It's like that's their purpose.
Yeah.
It's the people around them. It's nothing to do with them. I feel like Paul, every time you read something, it is nothing. He talks about himself, but it's usually negative.
Yeah.
Other than like, God's called me to do this.
Right.
But it's always about others. Every letter's about other people.
Yeah.
And I just feel like we turn to ourselves when we get into the gospel or we get into this relationship, which is the complete opposite of what you should be doing.
Right.
It's like you should start reflecting Jesus to others, not
Yeah.
absorbing them and then turning the mirror to you.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's easy to do as humans because we suck. But
yeah, and I think sometimes we're more worried about, well, if I do this or if I'm out here, then I'll stumble or I'll fall, you know, and that's legit too. But I think also what happens sometimes is we get around a few Christian people and then we start to get insulated and we find this security over here in this Christian lifeboat and we forget about all the people out here that are drowning in the storm.
Yeah.
And so I can't do that. You know, like I'm not doing that, or I'm, you know, that's not beneath me, but that's just not where I am right now, or whatever. And
I'm not ready for that.
Yeah, we gotta be able to still talk to people. You know, you got to realize that the people that you encounter in your class or in your fraternity or at the store or wherever you are,
your family,
and your family too. Like people still need Jesus, and now they have you to represent Christ to them.
Yeah.
And so what God has done is he's expanded the kingdom, but then we'll sometimes want to like close it off because we're just kind of worried about our thing, you know,
worry about our eternity. It's like,
like,
okay, well, God has sealed my fate and I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I reached the final destination. That's what I wanted to do, is just make it to heaven.
Yeah.
You can get in that mindset and just stop it right there.
Yeah.
Take your boots off and kick back.
Yeah. And I like what you said, that Paul, it's always about who he's around. Like he's always going to people. Like in every story you read in Acts, he's very keenly aware of where he is and who he's talking to. And he's very purposeful with everything that he says.
Yeah.
And I think that sounds like a rigid way to live, or like, oh, I got to be always on point. But man, I think that's the right way to live. Mm-hmm. I mean, to constantly be aware of who you're around and what you say and how you act and how that has an impact on those people.
Yeah, just a selfless mindset.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you get caught up with yourself, I mean, only you know like the bad things about you and all the things you do. And I feel like if you get caught up with yourself, that's just what you're going to be thinking about. And it can just be you. It's me, 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 me.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people aren't the nicest to themselves about themselves.
Yeah.
And that can just be that could be a worse rigid way to live than just trying to help people through what they're doing or their path with Christ, or just loving on them.
True. And so then Paul, he picks up the firewood and he gets bit by the snake. So what's your take on the snake there, I guess, you know? So.
Good thing it wasn't a cottonmouth. It was a viper. So I don't know if he would have made it if it was a cottonmouth. But no, what horrible luck, you know?
Right.
Like if I was him, I'm like, you're joking.
Yeah. Seriously?
Like, what? I mean, he shook it off like just whatever, which is freaking awesome. But
right.
I mean, as a person, like, okay, shipwreck, I knew God was going to save me. Like, angel came down.
Yeah.
You didn't say nothing about a snake. Like, I can't imagine a viper just latched on me and just staring at it like,
come on.
Like, that's not good. I know that's not good.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what do I do? I don't know if I'd start praying or like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that was going to happen.
Well, it said, I mean, all scripture says is that he shook off the snake into the fire. So that seems like that he's kind of following like a natural course of events, right? Like if I'm holding a pile of sticks and all of a sudden one of those sticks starts moving or whatever, I'm shaking that off. I'm throwing it into the fire as soon as I can. Like I'm dropping it right there.
Yeah.
So if he was on his way to the fire, it's natural that he just shakes it off into the fire. But
it makes it seem like he just like walks over to the fire. He's like,
get off of me.
Yeah.
There you go, snake. I am Paul.
Gnashing of teeth.
But I think the Bible leaves out the fact of like, oh my gosh, you know, like
it's a viper. Yeah.
Holy crap, there's a snake on my head. You know, like, there's definitely, I'm sure he shook the snake off probably because he jumped 3 feet in the air.
Absolutely.
And when he came back to the ground, he's like, you know, and so we think he's like this totally cool customer. And I think the Bible leaves out some stuff there.
Luke's like, I'll just say you just took it in fire. Like, don't worry, dude, I got you.
What a dude.
Yeah. He didn't even flinch.
Yeah, it doesn't say that, but we read that into it.
I know that dude jumped.
Yeah.
Like he has reflexes and he has adrenaline.
Yeah.
Like, it was pumping.
He is a human being.
Yeah.
So that was not expected. So I think like if you pick up enough firewood at night, you're eventually going to pick up a snake.
Absolutely.
Is a thing that and I don't say that as like a bad thing. I just say that as, well, Paul's doing in the moment what he's supposed to be doing. Like, if you want to say what you're called to do, well, in that moment, Paul was called, it was the will of God for Paul to be gathering firewood, right? Like, if that's what you're supposed to do in that moment, you're not, he was able enough to do it. So that's what he's supposed to be doing. And so if we're constantly living in the world, like, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but we're functioning, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And by supposed to be doing, I don't even necessarily mean some divine purpose, but just the simple task of life. Eventually, something like that might happen.
Yeah, I just feel like life's unfair.
Yeah,
it just is, and it kind of brings me back to when the Pharisees are asking Jesus about the blind man. It's like, so who sinned? His mom, his dad? Like, what happened?
Yeah,
it's like, well, neither. It's like, this happened in his life so that the will of God can be shined through, whatever the wordage of that is.
Yeah,
and it's like, I don't think that God placed the viper and the wood on purpose,
right?
It's just, but it happened, and then we'll read what we already read, but we'll get into later that because that happened, like, that opened the door for Paul to do some crazy stuff on the island.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's kind of reminded, like, why did that happen? Like, that's not fair. But you can get all hung up on the unfairness of it. But
on the why.
Yeah,
right?
On the why this happened.
Just like your example of the blind man and them asking Jesus about that. Like, well, they're asking, is it because he sinned this happened? And Jesus is basically saying no. But did that guy sin? Yes. Did his parents sin? Yes, absolutely. Are they human beings? Are they walking on earth? Do they poop? Do they need to eat food? I mean, stuff happens. The world is spinning. And so, this guy's born blind. But look what God's going to do
because of that,
right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we don't think of. We always want to think about, why did this happen? Or why does this suck so bad right now in my life? Why is this not working the way I want it to work? Instead of asking the question, okay, well, what's God going to do through this? And what is God going to do in spite of this? Like, I think that's a much better question to ask when life hits the fan, because undoubtedly that's going to happen.
Yeah. I just feel like miracles don't come out through the normality of life or things.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that surprising if a guy that is perfectly fine is walking around the street talking. Like, okay. But it comes through things that shouldn't happen. Like, Paul should have dropped dead there.
Based on what the Islanders thought, right?
Yeah, and it's I don't even know the verse, but Paul talks about, like, it's nothing, like, we can't take I guess credit for these things. It just shows that, like, this is from God. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like, that man was blind and now he sees.
Yeah.
It wasn't because of humans. It wasn't because of chance. Like, it was God, and it's undeniably. And if you deny it, that's a callous heart. Like, you just don't want to believe.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
because it's their island, it's their snake.
Yeah,
so they would know best.
They know what that snake does to people.
Right.
Yeah.
They've obviously seen it before. It's something that they've witnessed, and then in spite of that, God does something outside of it, something beyond it, something better, something bigger, right? So I think that's pretty cool. But I do think that's understandable. Like, just because you decided to follow Christ, I mean, Paul's traveling all the way across the freaking known world.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been on boats, and long trips for years.
This isn't comfortable stuff.
Yeah. He's out there preaching the gospel. He's doing what he is called to do.
Yeah.
And what happens to him? He has to go through a shipwreck and
imprisoned.
Imprisoned, and then he gets bit by this snake. So just because you're doing what God wants, you can't look at it and go, man, how come this happened to me, God?
Catch a break.
I mean, yeah. What are we doing here with the snake hanging off my head right now? We just climbed out of the ocean.
Like, I'm telling you, I would have just, like, slowly looked up. Like, well,
come on.
Like, okay.
But how many times do we respond like that? We just go, all right, God.
Explain yourself, Lord.
Yeah. There better be a freaking good reason why this is happening.
This is unfair. I don't deserve this.
Yeah. Because anybody else could have got bit by this snake. Why is it in my firewood pile? You know? But that's how we are.
Yeah.
And And then in spite of that, like God does something really, really cool in the fact that Paul doesn't die. And like you said, it opens the door for these islanders to go, whoa, hey, wait a second.
That's not normal.
That's not normal. That's not what we've experienced. And they begin to put all these assumptions on Paul.
He's a god or
he
something.
Must be a god. There's something. And so it immediately takes them from a very practical place, a very, this is how it is here on Malta type situation, to a spot of like opening their hearts up to the divine.
Yeah.
It puts them in a place where they're more,
yeah,
they're more ready to receive something big.
Mhm.
And I think that's pretty interesting too, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, like oftentimes it's when crazy things happen, then that's where we're in the position then to receive something big from God.
Absolutely.
Like we look back and go, whoa, okay, that's not normal. Like it's like when you hear somebody's testimony and you know the kind of person they were, and then you see the transformation in their life,
Mhm.
and you're going, okay, I can buy that. You know,
Yeah.
something's bigger going on here because I know what that dude was like.
Like I see the change.
You see it,
Yeah.
right? And so it's done in such a way. I think that's how the beauty of the kingdom of God. Like because of that, then you're more ready to receive something incredible for your own life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's really big. I think it's interesting though when he gets bit by the snake, they go, well, this man must be a murderer.
Yeah.
He's like the most unlucky joker on the planet.
Well, you're not wrong. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he was, but
he was a murderer. Paul calls himself the chief of sinners.
yeah,
He in fact was a murderer. If you go back, he was the guy pursuing Christians and pouring out threats against them is what how Luke writes it, and he throws him in jail. He was there when they stoned Stephen. He was
holding the cloak.
He was the young guy holding the cloaks. Yeah, exactly. So Paul is guilty, right? He is a murderer. I mean, very much so, and they have no idea.
Yeah,
like they don't. They're just that's their assumption that this guy must have like the spot of death, you know, like we're talking about Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, the black spot or whatever. Like he's got that on him, you know, like he's doomed. But it's true, and then that's how we all are. Like we all are deserving of snake bites.
Yeah, and it's funny because they have that. Okay, they're on an island. I'm assuming they don't have a lot of connection to the outside world, and they have this morality of okay, because of this, because he was a murderer. That's just an assumption, even though they just guessed it perfectly right.
Right.
He deserves his death. They have that morality, and so it doesn't make sense that he lived.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, well, he deserved that, and we have that like because of this, you deserve that. I mean, it's in our law or our justice system all over the country, all over the world. But it's like I talked about the mystery of the gospel, the mystery of whatever, and we don't deserve what we get from Jesus.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, well, that kind of is the draw to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like, okay, that don't make sense. That's not how it should be. But it is.
Right.
Like I kind of want to know more about that. And I just think that's cool. Well, he should die because he deserves it. And he did deserve it.
Yeah.
But God had a calling for him. He had a plan. Mm. And it's funny. Let's say he just didn't flinch. Let's just say he just shook it off in the fire. Like, yeah. But we talked about that yesterday. It's if he knew that he wasn't going to die.
Mm.
You know, that if he believes the angel, which I'm sure at this point in his life, he's
probably believing.
He's believing what God tells him.
Yeah.
And he's pretty faithful. I would say.
Yeah.
He's a little faithful. Like he knew he wasn't going to die. Like he had full faith in God that I'm going to Rome. I'm going to stand in front of Caesar. Absolutely. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And whatever. Shake the viper off. It's going to be okay. And everyone's freaking out. It's like, I'm telling you, listen to me.
Yeah.
Because I got some wisdom. I know what's going to happen. Other than, I didn't know the viper was going to happen, but that's just a rare case scenario.
Yes, I did jump.
Yeah, I did jump. I screamed, but like that was just, I'm the worst of sinners, you know, like I'm a human. But it's just funny that he knew where he was going and he trusted in that. And that's crazy. Like I would be freaking out, even though Gabriel comes down. He's like, you are going to Shreveport. And if a water moccasin bites me in the ankle, I'm like, Gabriel, I'm not going to Shreveport. I'm dying right here at the Wesley. I would be freaking out, but as it seems, he didn't. And he continued in his character and in his calling, healing and doing all the things Paul does.
I wonder how often angels have said that phrase. You're going to Shreveport.
Not one time. Not one. No one goes to Shreveport. It's a pit stop. It's not a destination.
Oh man, that's funny.
No, but
well, so you sounded like C.S. Lewis over there for a minute, like, right? You're talking about the Islanders. They go, yeah, this is what this. They have this justice code
just ingrained in their DNA.
Yeah. Which Lewis talks about that. We've read about that with Screw Tape and Mere Christianity and stuff, where that is in all humans. Like we have some semblance, some understanding of morality, and even at the basis levels, we have that. And so, and it's funny how, like Luke writes it just says that, like, how do they say it? They say that well, justice will get him. Basically, is what it says. Yeah, the goddess justice has not allowed him to live. That's what they say. Like, even though he escaped the sea, they say this as they're looking at the snake hanging from his hand.
Justice, which is, I guess, is one of their goddesses.
Yeah.
Has willed this to happen because of something he has done. Right.
Yeah. And so they're out there on the island, and they understand these basic concepts about who God is. That God is a God of justice, and they recognize that. And so I think a lot of people do that, but the problem is that we begin to say that, well, we're the administrator of justice.
It's just because of our altruistic nature of humans that you can't do anything. If you do something bad, it's just bad because it doesn't further the genetic or your species. You know?
Yeah,
it's just ingrained in you. I'm like, okay, yeah. There's a lot of examples where that's not true, but all through the animal kingdom. But that's not what this podcast is about.
Right. But they see it where this guy does deserve it, and like you said, he does deserve it, and that is the mystery of the gospel, that that what God wants to do is give us what we actually don't deserve.
Yeah,
like Christ died so that we might be saved. That the mystery of the gospel. Christ is died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. Like forgiveness and grace is available to all of us, even though we don't deserve it.
And it's funny, like God, he is a just God. That's his character. He is justice.
Yeah.
But that just because of that, like he knew that he can't go against his character. And that's why he sent Jesus. And that just shows, again, the mercy of God.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that he's just letting us off on a free limb, but he sent God himself in flesh and stayed true to his character. But I just think it's just, I don't know. It's hard. It's the mystery of why would he do that?
Yeah.
Like this creator of the universe. I don't know.
I was listening to this song yesterday driving back over to Monroe, and it's you've heard it a million times. It's like, my God, he was, my God, he is, my God, he's always going to be.
Yeah.
And he says this a couple of times in there. He says, so God, basically he's talking about sin in Jesus for sinful man, and so Jesus must die or whatever. And he says, you called it strange, so once did I. And that's before I knew my Savior or whatever. And so that's the deal. It's strange. It's mysterious. It just makes no sense why the God of the universe would do what he does for us when we deserve so much worse, and why he would offer a way out. He would offer grace and give us what we absolutely don't deserve.
Yeah.
And so, the Islanders were 100% right. And then Paul is there to take them the rest of the way. Like, we know you don't deserve to live, but you do. And then Paul kind of speaks.
Let me tell you why.
Let me tell you why. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But so, I think, I guess going on the next, this isn't, I'd found the notes from that sermon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But this isn't from it, but I was just kind of reading, and I was literally about to close my Bible, and I read that Paul went to him praying and laying his hands on him, and he healed him.
Yeah.
And I was like, laying his hands on him. I was like, the hand that he just got bitten on, he's laying on people and healing them.
Yeah.
And I'm
Look
like,
at you.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I was like, that's crazy. And then I went into the notes of that sermon and I had it in bold. And this guy must have said it. And he said, healed people heal people. And I'm like,
oh yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, just the scars. Everyone has scars. Everyone has wounds. But it's like, what did I say? Like, God can use you even with those wounds and scars.
Yeah.
Even like the worst things could have happened to you, water boxing,
Yeah.
bleached on your hand. But like, that doesn't matter. Like, he did the miracles that only God could do with poison in his hand. Like, it's just, that shows like the sovereignty of God. It doesn't matter what happens. Like, if he wills something in your life, he's calling you to do it, and he's told you, maybe not voice in your head, but like, you know, this is what I need to do. Like, it is completely possible that he's going to do it.
Yeah.
It was just, I don't know, the hand he was bitten on. He's bringing people back to life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really, really, really good. And I think that's interesting because this whole scene with Paul going into the guy's house, healing the guy's dad, right? This is dad that's in bed sick with a fever.
Yeah.
And then they start bringing other people to him to be healed. It's just like Jesus. And Luke describes it in the Gospel of Luke, where Jesus heals Peter's mother-in-law and she has a fever. And then all these other people start coming from the neighborhood, from the town, and he starts healing them. And so Paul is being just like Jesus. Like, it's nothing like what he's doing in this 10 verses. We shouldn't be surprised at any of it because he's being like Christ, which is what he's called to do, which is what we're called to do, which, like you're talking about, healed hands heal people, or the hand that got bit by the snake is now healing them. Well, okay, Jesus went to the cross and defeated death. And so that same guy, that same God man, the Savior, like, he is executed for our sins, beaten to the brink of his life, and then nailed to a cross and suffers. That same God is the one who rises from the grave, who defeats death, just like you're talking about. That hand that was bitten is placed on these people and it brings healing. And so, yeah, you're so good with that, man. That's so true.
Yeah.
And how, and we might think, man, I'm nothing, or I've screwed up too bad or whatever. Well, guess what? I mean, Jesus had all the sin of the whole world poured on him, and then he defeated death. He rose from the grave. So if that can happen, then whatever your bad stuff is that's going on in your life, God can flip it.
Yeah.
And use you for something incredible. And because think about it, because he had that snake bite, then that made those people even more keenly tuned to what's going on here. Well, yeah, this guy ought to be able to, whatever he's talking about the power of God, like, it's flowed through him because we just saw it.
Yeah.
We just witnessed it. And then now he's applying it over here. And so you're the most qualified person to reach the people you know. People say that stuff all the time, right? Well, and by the fact that you are a sinner saved by grace, you're extremely qualified to talk to somebody else who's in that situation you were in and say, look, you don't have to stay in this. This doesn't have to dominate your life. You can receive healing and grace for your life and move forward in the way God wants you to, because it happened to me.
Yeah. And it's like, you may not have viper fang marks on your hand, but like, all the people around you who grew up with you, they saw you out at the club or out smoking with each other, and they see your past addictions and past flaws. And that's the same way as the viper bite. Like, that's and they can see that change in you, and you're doing these things. You're helping people, you're praying for people, whatever you're doing for God, and just being Jesus's light is shining through you. That is, that's the gospel right there. Like, that is just your past scars. It doesn't mean that you cannot be used. God, I think that's the reason that you can be so effective. It's because of your past struggles. And I mean, nothing against if you rose and you just never had problems in your life. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But if you were put in a situation where these people are struggling with issues, you have no idea. Like you've never struggled with them, and they know you haven't. Sometimes that's just not the place where you're going to have the most pull.
Yeah.
But if, man, you've struggled with these things, and you might still be kind of like in the mix of it.
Yeah.
But you're trying to get out of it, and Jesus is going to shine through you through that, and that, like you said, you are the best person to reach the people around you. And I feel like that's such a lie from the enemy to make you feel like you're not, because that was my excuse. Like, well, I was with these people doing all this stuff, but they're not going to listen to me.
Yeah.
Like, you want to bet?
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
They may have that thought, like, well, he was doing the same thing I was.
Yeah.
But he's not anymore. Why is that? Because I know this guy. I know he was pretty addicted. He's not anymore. What's up with that? And you have some that opens them up to you. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
How the thoughts, the anxieties or fears just contradicts what God is intending for you. And that should be a light bulb right there. Like, well, spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
Like, it's there. It's all around you. If you just, your eyes are open to it.
Yeah. And that's why Christ came in as a man, right?
Yeah.
Because so he would be tempted in the same ways. And so that's just like how that works for you. Like you're talking about as a guy in a fraternity who's came through it and God has restored you, redeemed you, whatever, and pulled you out of darkness. You're very uniquely qualified to speak to these guys that are in the fraternity now that are younger or whatever. Well, that's exactly the pattern of Christ, because he lived as a human, because he was born the same way the rest of us were born, because he pooped and sweated and did all kinds of stuff and experienced everything we experienced.
Wasn't born a king.
No, not by any stretch, right? Born into very humble circumstances. Because of all of that, it makes him uniquely qualified to be our Savior, to be the pattern for us for how to live. Like, no one can do what he does any better, and no one can even do it at all in that same way. But then we look at Jesus and we go, okay, because of that, now I can do what you've called me to do.
Not saying he was never qualified, but that he did that so he meets every qualification for us to trust him.
Yeah.
Because there is an argument if he didn't do that or somehow sacrificed himself, not as I don't know how that would happen, but we'd be like, well, he has no idea what I'm going through. Like, he has never been tempted by lust or drink or whatever that is to be angry at somebody and to lash out. He's never. So how can he know how to fight this? But he did. Yeah. And that's, of course, God planned it out perfectly, and he checked all the boxes. But it's just undeniable that why he did it for that reason.
And I get it when people go, oh, well, but he was Jesus, so he knew everything, so he knew how it was all going to turn out or whatever.
Yeah. He was God.
So what? He still went through it. Like, okay, if I'm going to go work out today, well, I know for about 45 to 50 minutes, whatever I'm doing is going to be excruciatingly painful. It's going to suck today, especially after yesterday. But I'm still going to, but I do know the benefit on the backside. But to get to that benefit and to get to that good place, I still got to go through this.
It's like that ice bath. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know those 3 minutes are going to suck every time. I'm like, this is going to be so bad. But like, I know, right? I get out, the sun's going to be brighter, and it's just going to be a great day. Yeah. And that doesn't discount, like, even though I know I'm going to be okay after the ice bath, right? I'm going to be breathing still. Yeah. It still sucks.
It doesn't take away the sharp pain.
I could easily back out. Yeah. Easily. I could call, like, because some of the other guys just kind of like hang out, and that's fine. Yeah. I have an excuse just to not, like, well, they're not doing it, so I'm not. Yeah. But hey, it's for good reason. And even if he did know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it just because you know how good you're going to feel and yada, 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 and it's only 3 minutes, whatever, you still have to do the 3 minutes.
Yeah. And it's a pretty long 3 minutes.
Yeah. It doesn't take away the sharpness of the pain of being in there.
It's just like being crucified. That's joke.
I was thinking too, like I think we've talked about this before, maybe on the podcast, but like in Pirates of the Caribbean, when Jack Sparrow wants to be captain of the Flying Dutchman, and Will's. Did we talk about that on the podcast?
I don't know.
I hate, dude.
I don't think we've ever talked about.
Well, he
Pirates of
wants to
the
be captain of the Flying Dutchman so he can sail forever.
Caribbean.
And Will's like, Jack, you still have to do the job. You still have to ferry souls to the next world. Like, you have to do the stuff. You don't just get to be sailing around doing whatever you want to do, you know? So, like, I mean, when we're up against something like that, I mean, and we think about like our situation and how it kind of sucks or whatever, and no, it's not right. I mean, it's not the same for Jesus or whatever. Well, no, he still had to do the job. I mean, he was a human. He experienced all the temptations like you talked about. He was whipped. He was nailed to the cross. He died. Like, he experienced all of that stuff.
Yeah, and it's funny that sometimes you could even have an argument if he didn't have a way out. Like, well, he didn't have a choice to. If he could have, he would have gotten out of it because he's God. But he did have, like, he could have called on the legions of angels. I mean, at a freaking snap and be like, get me out of here, wipe the earth.
Yeah,
these people
start over.
They're horrible. They're torturing me. I'm the creator of these. I created these people. I know every single one of them, and they're still doing this to me, which is, I mean, I don't know how someone could humble themselves that much, but he did. Just to even put on flesh is humble enough.
Right.
But he had a way out. Easily could have snapped his fingers, but he didn't. Yeah. He endured the worst death a human could endure.
Yeah. And we oftentimes will snap our fingers and get out of things.
Yeah.
That
makes it even better that there was a way out.
Yeah.
Like, God could have thought of another plan probably to forgive the earth. But, like, honestly, I don't even know. He probably could have. He could.
Well, but think about it like this. Like, he knew that was the only way.
Yeah.
And he still did it. I just think, like, there is no other better way. Like, this is the way that it has to happen.
Yeah.
And because people need to see redemption, people need to see that there's hope. They need to see that there's light even in the darkest places, right? So anyway, but yeah, as we kind of get to the end of this, like, one of the things that I love about it, like, if you read the whole 10 verses, and it says that the Islanders, like, took care of them, provided what they need, set them on their journey, and so you can kind of unpack that and talk about how that God used those people in that moment. Like, they're in this incredible book because of their hospitality and because of the way Paul, responded to them and how God moved on their island. But all of this was because of his shipwreck. Like, Malta was not on the tour package plan.
Not for Paul.
Not for Paul. Like, he was not supposed to go there. Like, that's not what he wanted to do. He didn't want to be shipwrecked. Malta wasn't on the list of stops. It wasn't part of Paul's plan, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, so when you're dumped in the middle of something and it's not part of your plan, it doesn't mean that God still doesn't want to work. And it doesn't mean that maybe it wasn't on your plan, but maybe this is God's plan.
Do you think Paul would have thought that his time on Malta would be talked about in 2025 on the Bayou of Louisiana?
No.
Like,
no shot.
Not at all. And that was, it's the worst case scenario for Paul.
Right, yeah.
Like,
this delays him getting to Rome. They almost died. They could have lost people. They were without food for a while. And who knows, like, if Malta's an island that can actually help him get another ship and get moving on, and he gets bit by a snake, and I mean, there's just so many things. And so when it's not part of our plan, we get super frustrated about it, and we want to start cussing people or cussing God, and just, like, being all mad about the situation, when maybe what we should do is step back and go, okay, yes, this is not what I expected. This is not part of the plan. But God, how are you still going to work through this?
Yeah.
And I use that phrase a lot. I stole it from this old John Grisham book and movie that Tom Cruise was in called The Firm. But it's not so much that God is always providing a way out, but that he provides a way through.
Yeah.
And I just think that's what he does right here. And that's what he does with our plans that don't work out according to the way we want them. Well, God's still going to work through.
Yeah. I don't know how Paul thought. I'm sure as a human, probably didn't think it was the best case scenario. But if it was me, like, my mindset would have been, man, this is delaying my calling that God has given me.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, like, that was part of his calling. It wasn't God told you this, but like, oh, this happened, but now I'm gonna help you out of it. Which he did help him out of it, but maybe that was just part of the plan of the calling. It wasn't a pit stop or a
It
mess
wasn't
up.
a pit stop.
It was part of the path there.
Yeah.
You know, like, we think of it as a mistake or a just
accident.
an accident, but what if that was just the next destination of the calling?
Mm. Yeah. What if there's something bigger going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, maybe God doesn't mess up. Like
and it's hard to think about that when someone
Something.
rear ends you, you know, or you know, we saw somebody we knew the other day at Walmart, and they were groceries. They were at the checkout thing, and we were too, and they were packing up their stuff, and we were both talking the whole time. And in one of their sacks, there was like something with glass, and I don't know if the bag just ripped or if when they pulled the bag, they only grabbed one of the handles and not the other one. It just fell out, but it like right there at the checkout, they were headed out and going home, you know, done for the night. And then this thing hits the floor and shatters, and they got to go through that whole process. Like, yeah, that sucks, man. It's hard to go. Okay,
that's part of my calling.
Yeah. I mean, that you just go
for real.
Yeah, but God still. I mean, that's a silly example, but even through our shattered glass or whatever, God still wants to work his good purposes. Yeah. And what we may see, and it's that verse that Wyatt talks about from Genesis quite a bit, like what we intend for evil, God intended for good.
I was going to say that earlier because you said something almost exact. You almost said the verse. It's like, it looks like error.
Yeah. So shout out to Wyatt, shout out to Genesis and Joseph and all that stuff. But I think that's what we got to realize. Like, God is still working even in the midst of what we may see as a disaster.
Yeah.
Because that's what they were experiencing, right?
Yeah.
And you'll see it too on any movie where there is a shipwreck or a plane wreck or whatever. There's always that idiot in the group that's like totally self-consumed and like, well, I got to get back. I got stuff to do. I got to get back home, or I get this. Or like, hey, dude, bro, just chill. Right now, you're on this island. Right now, we don't know where we are. Right now, you've got these people around you, and you can be a part of their lives and helping them through this situation, or you can just hit the panic button and stay focused on yourself and ruin this for everybody else and miss opportunities to do something good that just maybe you might be the exact right person here to do that thing. Like, God may have put you here for this exact right purpose.
Yeah, like, again, I'll like that. Whoever was checking out, I don't think God's like, he's going to go to Walmart, he's going to drop his glass, he's going to do it. Like, I don't think he's just writing out your itinerary. No. But like, I think he also like puts you in these situations that you have an opportunity to show God's light or not.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, he knows what you're going to do. Yeah, he's all knowing, but I think he puts you in these situations that seem like a shipwreck or a broken glass for you to not follow the world and be abnormal in that situation to show the light of God.
Yeah.
I think that's a better way to look at it than like, oh, God, maybe drop my glass. I guess it's just build my character. Like, you know, it's just, there's bad ways to think about it.
Yeah.
But there's always, you can always do good. Like, that's the choice. There's always a choice. Every opportunity, you say, is a divine opportunity. Every conversation is a divine conversation. If you think about it like that, like, there's a choice to do good and the choice to follow God's will every second of the day at every moment.
Yeah.
Whether it sucks for you or it's a mountaintop for you. Like,
right.
There's always a choice.
Right. Yeah. I'm not saying that we're supposed to pray for shipwrecks or snake bites, but
it's going to happen.
And I think we are called to whatever degree we can to shake off snake bites, like to shake that off. And I think too, to embrace the shipwreck sounds really bad.
Yeah.
But
just understand it's going to happen.
It, you know, like see it for what it is and for what God can do through it. Like, don't think about just how horrible it is, but try somehow. And maybe it's not going to be instantaneous. I mean, they might have sat around that fire for a while before people started talking and they realized, hey, man, we can go to what's his name's house. I mean, it was probably a little while before it turned, and they were there for a bit, right? So I just think that
3 months.
Yeah, 3 months. And and it wasn't on the itinerary.
Yeah.
So maybe not pray for shipwrecks, but I do think embrace them in that sense of, okay, what do you want to do here, God?
Yeah, I mean, of course, Jesus says that troubles will come.
Yeah.
And like that's a hopeless situation in Malta.
Yeah.
To the human.
There's no satellite phone.
No, like there's a lot of seemingly hopeless situations that you're in, like, what's the good in this?
Yeah.
And maybe in the world's eye, or in the human eye, like it's not, there shouldn't be, but you're called to be a hope or a light or just goodness in this dark world that's just consumed with not good thoughts and not good things.
Yeah.
And you can easily just sit in that.
Yeah.
It's very easy just to sit like, well, that's just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, it'll pass, I think. I'll just sleep on it. Or just be like, it sucks. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can do something good here.
Yeah.
Or God can do something good through me if I just let him.
Yeah, for sure. I think you hear the term shipwrecked faith, and often you just think about something bad, like that person's fallen off. But maybe that's the exact kind of faith we need. We need shipwrecked faith.
Yeah,
because then we see it. We see God for what He can do through a difficult situation. So, I'm not saying pray for the shipwreck, but
when they come,
we need that kind of faith. We need shipwrecked kind of faith.
Yeah. You can make more impacts in a shipwreck than in a
rose garden.
In a rose garden,
yeah.
Yeah.
on a carnival cruise.
Yeah, carnival. Okay. I don't even know any other. I know that one's not good.
I've never done it, but I see
it's better than that. I'll give you that. Better than Malta.
All right, man.
But yeah,
well, that was a good half 90 or whatever we did.
I don't even know what that was. Yeah. But the end of 28, I do like. I read through. I was like, man, that's good. Yeah. When he talked about Isaiah. You talked about it, I think, earlier. Yeah. The beginning of it, but I guess it's a pretty good book. But yeah, good 45.
Yep. There we go. All right. Adios, folks.
See you, sinners.